And I'm going to continue with you for the next question, which is now that you've been dialing into and, experimenting with and your splenic authority, what has that process been like? So I know this is a very broad question, but what has that process been like? And how, maybe the first question or the first part of that is, how does it show up for you? How does your intuition and your authority show up for you? How does it communicate with you?
Yeah, if I pay attention, if I stay present in the moment, I can feel it's just hard to describe the feeling, but it comes from the belly kind of. There is like for a short amount of time, like an inner knowing, like a certainty for whatever I experience in this moment, if it's like right or wrong for me. So it comes from the belly and manifests, but it's hard for me to find words how exactly it feels. It's just, it's more like a knowing that it's correct or not.
Right. One of the things I tend to say with the spleen is, and your splenic authority, but even just the spleen talking, is you don't know how you know, you just know.
Yeah.
Exactly. You just know, right?
Yeah.
And part of that process then becomes trusting that knowing.
Exactly.
And like you said, also, I mean, even growing up, and a few of the other panelists talked about not trusting, not listening, especially Brigitte talking about coming from an environment where, they don't want you to listen to yourself and your intuition and your knowing and all that, right? They don't, I guess, Brigitte, you can call it independent thinking. They don't want that independent thinking and independent, process. And so it's very fascinating how that shows up and how differently it is. And just for the context of the panel and today in the interviews, we're not going to go into rabbit holes of gates and that in terms of the spleen, but they might come up, gates and channels might come up in conversation. But just to illustrate that different people's intuition shows up in different ways. And so we're going to go around to the panel and just find out a little bit more about that. So next I'll jump actually to Brigitte, since I just mentioned you. How is that process now for your authority, right? Your intuition and your spleen? How does that communicate with you, or can you even describe it, or what's that experience like for you?
Yeah, I can describe it now. It definitely is very much instantaneous hit, so if we're following a projector flow and it's going at, a thoughtful speed that we can think about something, somebody will invite me to something. I'm recognized, I'm invited, and then for some reason my gut will go off and it literally feels, if it's a no or if there's like a warning around it, it feels like stage fright. If anyone's ever had to do like a piano concert or as a kid or anything, and it feels like a flutter of anxiety, like you almost, if you let it go on too long, you might have to double over. It just doesn't feel good. So that's kind of how strong it is right now. And just to harken back to when I was growing up, I had always had the exact same feeling about things, that didn't feel right or a little hinky or whatever. But being told it wasn't correct, literally, I would get sick. That's kind of how strong it is for me.
And so now, you're talking about this kind of nervous stomach, which is interesting to hear, because for me, as a sacral being with emotional authority, I feel things in my sacral. I feel that response. And when I feel the nervousness, that's something different for me. That's telling me that's not my sacral. That's telling me that's FOMO, or, maybe some excitement, but not necessarily a yes. Right? There's some sort of, maybe for lack of a better term, some anxiety associated with whatever's going on. So for me, that is a signal to not trust what is going on, because that is not that's not my natural process, I guess, is a better way to explain it. And I have undefined spleen. So it's fascinating. And this is why I love these panel interviews, and I love listening to each person's experience of how they go through, right? How their body communicates with them, because our body's way more intelligent than our heads ever can be, in terms of decision making and just knowing what feels good.
Exactly. Sometimes when people are first learning human design, they're looking for an exact way to experience something. They've read it and it's like, I don't relate to that. Something must be wrong. And if you just allow enough time, you will have your own experience with that thing. Right. And if you talk to enough people, you'll realize that they're having their own experience with that thing. Everybody has a unique way. Definitely maybe a foundation vibe around it, but so I love hearing that you have that feeling in your chart, but it means something different to you. And for me, it means this whole other thing. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the right word. I mean, I really call it allowing, because it really is about shedding the conditioning, shedding the onion layers that are not us, right? The masks and the costumes, and allowing whatever it is at the deeper parts of our being just to come to the surface and just be, without judgment or without trying to control anything. And it's very powerful. Oh, thank you. Shannon.
So there's a thought that goes through my head, and it's a common theme sometimes: being in the now, living in the now. That's my life, is in the now. And I never really understood why it was like that, but I don't do well with planning. And I have a lot of logic circuits, so I'm a very logical person in that respect. But what I realized from my Splenic Authority, I'm very clear on the no. That's my trust point. So I don't always get a yes. If I just stay in the moment, I read energy. And so if I'm in a place and I'm experiencing the energy, or I'm with someone and I'm experiencing energy, I'm just deciding in this moment, does it feel good or doesn't feel good? But when it comes to the big decisions, I'm really conscious that I don't get a yes. I just get a no. And the no's really loud, really fast, and really quick. And if I look back at my own history, every time I've gotten myself in trouble is when I have tried to think my way out of the no, because I don't know why it's a no. It just is the no. And so I'm like, oh yeah, but okay, that's the key word. I should, whatever. Whenever I hear that and I realize I'm negotiating with myself, I've moved out of my authority and I've moved into my mind. And since I don't have a defined mind either, that's not really a good place for me to make decisions from. And I think that's kind of an important thing when we realize that splenic is, it's based in that survival instinct, but it's not that we're trying to quote unquote survive, but animals think very quickly. I'm really connected to the natural world. I'm really connected to animals in general. And they do tend to leave much more in the moment, because they're deciding, am I going to get eaten by a larger predator? I do a lot of coaching with horses, and horses are they're prey animals, and they see something in the distance and they think, oh my God, is it a lion? I should run. So they bolt, and then the plastic bag comes floating along the environment and they go, oh, and then they go back to grazing. They don't spend a lot of time telling themselves, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I freaked out over a paper bag. They just deal with things in the moment. And that was the thing that learning more about Splenic Authority really helped me, was it started to teach me to stop second guessing myself, to trust the no, to trust my capacity to read energy, to trust my intuition, which is very strong, and to stop trying to talk myself out of that lightning fast decision making, because I'm surrounded by lots of people, and most of them are generators and manifestors, and they have other authority. So I think being able to recognize what your authority is and then saying, that is mine, I can claim that, and then I can trust it and deepen it.
Nice. I love that. And yes, the no's are just as valuable.
Oh, no.
Because that's your body's intelligence saying, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, I don't have, whatever it is, right? This is not a commitment that feels good. And so, the no's are incredibly valuable, because I think probably, I'm learning this as an emotional authority. The yeses, the real yeses, are probably fewer and further between than we think or hope. But that's because they take time to implement, on a bigger decision. It takes time to roll that out. So thank you for that.
Sure. And just one other thing, I think sometimes we think we're looking for a yes, but if we're always in the yes, if everything is always an okay thing until it's not, then we don't have to spend so much time going, should I do this or should I not do it? We can just follow wherever that intuition or wherever that impulse takes us. I always tell people on my headstone, my little theme will be, it seemed like a good idea at the time, because I'm a 1-3. So I want to investigate, and then I have to find out what doesn't work. Right. And so if I'm always in the yes, then I'm always in the curiosity mode. And then I know that I can trust my spleen when to put on the brakes, but I don't have to spend a lot of time going, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? So.
Got it. Ka, you wanted to add to that?
I can very well relate to what Shannon just said. With trying to justify the no, or in my case even the yes, where I was not sure, like, because I did not feel it, and I have a defined head, so I always went into the mind and I rationalized and tried to find the reasons for the yes and the no, and I could go like to the very end and think to the very end, but in the end, when the things happen, it didn't really help me, because then I still felt something is not really fitting, but I should do this, because I rationalized it and I made myself the reason to do it, and it didn't help at all, of course, because I didn't have the access to my authority at that point, and then it was, of course, adding into to like a vicious cycle, where I often ended up like I did things, I was successful with things, but it still didn't feel like it's flowing. Yeah. So it's a very good point, is going into the mind when I don't have the access to my authority.
All right. Thanks for sharing. Yes. Trust. Easy to understand, difficult to do. It's a process. It's definitely a process. Tammy, Splenic Authority.
So let's talk about the spleen for a second here, because we never really dived into what the spleen is. So the spleen center is an awareness center, right? There's no energy in that center. So it's an awareness center. But how is it that we become aware of our intuition, time, survival, health, and in the now? So the spleen is all about what is healthy for me. Is this healthy for me? That's how I tend to see it. Is this a healthy decision for me and my energy? Because there's no energy there. It is just awareness. So I'm super, super intuitive, and I've started kind of leaning into the as an emotional generator, like, ask me later, ask me closer to that time, because I'll have a better answer. And I'm starting to lean into that a little bit as well. It's like, ask me, like when I get shifts from work, for instance, I don't want to book shifts 3 months in advance. I don't know what I'm going to be doing or what kind of energy I'm going to have. I'll answer you 3 days before, because then I'll know, I'll be in that awareness. And so really experimenting with, that awareness. And so I'm super, super intuitive. And the level of trust now that I'm able to move into is really interesting, because I always follow the synchronicities and the coincidences. And when you're in flow, when you have that awareness and that flow, life happens with you, right? And so you're going to get clues. And I know a lot of people say intuition is highly sensing, but I'm very logical, and I have been able to know what my intuition hits feel like, and write it down and create systems and patterns to understand my intuition in a more logical way that feels, good for me. So the way that my intuition happens, it really is in the now, in the moment, and this deep level of trust that even if it wasn't correct, I'll know, I trust that whatever happens, that I can handle it or not, right? So it really is that deep level of trust and awareness, and have fun, not to take it so seriously, because life can be fun if you're not so serious in the head all the time, and really just playing in your body and really experimenting. What does this feel like to me? So it's not a gut hit for me at all. It really is this somatic experience. I'll feel it, I'll get goosebumps. I'll get that next, synchronicity or coincidence that'll happen, and it'll flow so easily. Like, for instance, when I got invited to speak at the conference, it just happened so easily. I didn't have to book my flights. I didn't have to find my hotel. I didn't have to worry about anything, because the universe just opened up and sent all my angels to help me out. And that's when I know that it's a true yes for me. And I loved what Shannon said, live your life as a yes until it's a no. And I love that so much.
Absolutely. I can completely identify with the flow versus, resistance or force, or just a bit of a wall. And I'm definitely tapping into that as well, just in general, and the synchronicities, and also letting my design fly. So I laughed when you were talking about how everything flowed with the conference, and just the conversations we had in the back end, that, line one, me doing all the checks and balances, and line two, you going, thank you, received, right? Because I'm like, oh, Tammy, I want to share this with you, right? And just kind of letting all that unfold so beautifully.